Detective. So, Chloe, just to be absolutely clear, you're the only one who has been driving the blue sedan for the last 48 hours? Chloe. Yes, it's registered to me. My fiancé, Ethan, uses his truck. Why? Did I get a parking ticket or something? Detective. No, Chloe, not a parking ticket. We actually just finished inspecting the vehicle out in the lot. Sitting in this dimly lit concrete interrogation room is 24-year-old Chloe Reed. She is wearing a modern engagement ring, her hair is pulled back, and her posture is completely relaxed. She genuinely believes she is here to clear up a routine paperwork error regarding her vehicle registration. But right now, Chloe has absolutely no idea that less than 50 feet away, in the pouring rain of the police precinct parking lot, forensics teams are wrapping yellow biohazard tape around her rear bumper. They have just popped her trunk. And hidden beneath a heavy winter blanket and a rusted spare tire is the frozen, bound body of a 17-year-old boy. His name was Leo Keller. He has been missing for over 140 days. What no one in this room knows yet is the deeply twisted reason why Leo was targeted. And worse, the terrifying reality of who actually put him there. Detective. Ethan. Man to man. Look at me. We already know what's in the back of the car. It is what it is. Tell me how it got there. Before the masks completely melted away in this room, the city of Oak Ridge was haunted by a completely different mystery. It began 5 months earlier, when 17-year-old Leo Keller vanished into thin air on his walk home from a local library. Leo wasn't a runaway. He was a quiet, deeply vulnerable teenager who spent his free time building custom computers and helping his single mother around the house. He was the kind of kid who texted his mom every time he crossed the street. So when his phone suddenly went dark on a Tuesday afternoon, his family instantly knew something was violently wrong. For months, investigators hit absolute brick walls. No eyewitnesses, no security footage, no digital trail. Leo had simply vanished into the quiet suburban ether. Until today, when a routine traffic stop for an expired plate takes a turn that changes everything. The driver of the car was Chloe. She was cooperative, polite, and completely entirely unfazed when detectives asked her to step out of the vehicle. But as she sat waiting in the precinct, a seasoned detective noticed a faint chemical odor emanating from the rear of the sedan. When they opened the trunk, the reality of what they found shook even the most veteran homicide detectives on the force. Leo hadn't just been hidden. He had been systematically restrained using heavy-duty industrial zip ties. And yet, looking at Chloe's clean background, she had no criminal history. She worked at a local daycare. She was planning a wedding. To the detectives, it made absolutely no sense. Why would this young woman carry out such a brutal, calculated execution? The answer lay with the man currently sitting in Interrogation Room B, her fiancé, Ethan. Welcome to TimeWithX. If you are new to the channel, you know we don't just analyze the evidence. We deconstruct the exact second the human mask completely slips. If you want to see how this psychological trap unfolds, hit that subscribe button right now. Because the details of what Ethan did next will make you question the people closest to you. As detectives begin playing the audio tapes from both rooms simultaneously, a chilling realization begins to dawn on the investigators. Chloe is completely, undeniably innocent. She truly had no idea what she was driving around with. But her fiancé, Ethan, he isn't sweating, he isn't crying. He is sitting completely still, staring directly into the lens of the police camera. Because Ethan knows something the detectives haven't figured out yet. He knows that before Leo was neutralized, the teenager had uninstalled a security app from Ethan's personal phone. A security app connected to a hidden encrypted cloud server. And what Leo discovered on that server is the exact reason why he could never be allowed to go home. Detective. Ethan, your fiancé's life is entirely on the line right now. If she didn't know the boy was in her trunk, you need to speak up. Because right now, she's facing first-degree murder. She didn't know. But you guys don't get it. You don't know what that kid saw. What exactly did Leo see? What did Leo see? And how did a harmless, tech-savvy teenager accidentally stumble into a dark, digital vault that a stone-cold killer would commit murder to protect? The psychological chess match was about to begin, and the first piece to fall would shatter Chloe's world forever.
To understand how a high school junior ends up in the back of a vehicle belonging to a complete stranger, we have to rewind the clock 5 months. To a small, impeccably organized bedroom on the north side of Oak Ridge. This was Leo Keller's sanctuary. It wasn't filled with sports trophies or concert posters, but with a complex grid of custom-built computer towers, bare circuit boards, and monitors that hummed quietly through the night. Leo was unique. On the high school spectrum, he kept to himself. He had a profound, self-taught understanding of network infrastructure and digital forensic mapping. At 17, while his peers were playing video games, Leo was analyzing open-source code and building custom firewalls. He was exceptionally disciplined. His mother, Maria, recalls that Leo operated like clockwork. He had an internal schedule that never varied. School ended at 3:15 p.m. He arrived at the municipal library by 3:30 p.m. to use their high-speed fiber optic network for his independent projects. He left at exactly 5:30 p.m. He walked home along Elm Street, a well-lit suburban avenue. He always walked into his kitchen by 5:50 p.m. to help his mother prepare dinner. But on Tuesday, January 13th, the clock in the kitchen struck 6 p.m., then 6:15 p.m. Maria Keller stood by the stove, her eyes darting to her phone. She called Leo. It rang 3 times, then shifted into the cold, mechanical, automated voice of his network provider. She texted him. No response. For any other teenager, a 30-minute delay is a minor oversight. For Leo, it was an impossibility. By 7 p.m., Maria was standing inside the Oak Ridge Police Precinct, her voice trembling as she tried to explain to a desk sergeant that her son was missing. The initial response was predictable. Teenagers walk away, they get distracted, they lose track of time. But Maria looked the sergeant dead in the eye and said, "You don't understand. Leo doesn't lose track of time. Someone has taken my boy." The early days of the search were agonizingly stagnant. Search parties combed the woods near the library. Canine units sniffed the sidewalks of Elm Street, but the scent trail simply vanished near an intersection half a mile from Leo's house. It was as if Leo had stepped off the edge of the earth. Detectives checked his phone records, but the device had been completely disconnected from the cellular network at exactly 5:42 p.m. The last ping was registered near a blind spot on the road, a section of the avenue flanked by heavy oak trees and completely hidden from residential security cameras. Weeks turned into months. The posters on the local telephone poles began to fade from the sun, their edges peeling back in the wind. The police folders on Leo Keller grew thick, but remained entirely devoid of actionable leads. The community slowly, quietly returned to its routine. But back inside that quiet bedroom, Maria Keller refused to let the silence win. She would sit at Leo's desk for hours, staring at his multi-monitor setup, praying for an answer. She didn't know how to operate his complex security scripts, but she knew Leo kept an automated local backup drive connected to their home network, a drive that mirrored his active cloud accounts every single night at midnight. One evening, nearly 4 months after Leo vanished, Maria began clicking randomly through his local directories. She wasn't looking for a forensic breakthrough. She was simply looking for his old photos, his voice, any digital remnant of her son. But as she opened a folder labeled with a string of hexadecimal digits, a document popped up that made her heart stop. It was an automated system text log from Leo's phone, pushed to his home server just minutes before his device was permanently deactivated. The log revealed that on the afternoon of January 13th, while sitting in the library, Leo hadn't been working on his normal programming. He had been running a standard network security sweep using an open-source packet analyzer. It was a harmless exercise he did frequently to test local server configurations. But on that specific afternoon, his software intercepted an anomalous, unencrypted IP stream broadcasting from a commercial vehicle parked right outside the library window. The broadcast was leaked data from an automated tracking application. Leo, driven by pure technical curiosity, had traced the stream back to its host server. It was an unsecured, private cloud directory. And when he bypassed the basic network gate, his system automatically downloaded an indexed manifest of the files stored inside. Maria couldn't understand the complex technical lines of code, but she could read the plain text metadata tags Leo had highlighted in red. The directory didn't belong to a corporation. It belonged to an individual who was systematically logging the daily schedules, physical descriptions, and personal addresses of dozens of young women in the Oak Ridge area. And at the very bottom of the log, Leo had typed a single, frantic note. Owner account registered to Vance, security firm admin. He's watching them from his car. Detective: Ethan, we've been looking through your corporate service logs. You operate an independent IT consulting firm under the name Vance Security, correct? You handle cloud transitions for local businesses? That's right. We provide data protection and localized server hosting. It's a highly specialized service. Detective: And as the admin, you have total, unrestricted access to those servers from any device, even from your truck? Of course, that's standard operational protocol. If a client system suffers a breach, I need to be able to patch it immediately, wherever I am. Why are we talking about my network architecture? The detectives in Interrogation Room B didn't answer Ethan's question right away. Instead, they let the silence stretch out, watching his eyes. Ethan Vance was a respected figure in the local business community. He was 32, articulate, clean-cut, and sat with a calm, analytical posture that radiated control. He was a man who solved digital problems for a living. He was also the man who, just 3 months prior, had placed a sparkling diamond ring on the finger of Chloe Reed. Think about the sheer psychological horror of Chloe's position. For months, she believed she was building a life with a protective, successful partner. She was busy organizing catering menus, choosing floral arrangements, and driving her reliable blue sedan to work every morning. She had no idea that every single time she turned the key in the ignition, she was operating a mobile container for a horrific secret. But how did that secret make the terrifying transition from a digital server file into the physical trunk of Chloe's car? When Maria Keller discovered that text log, she didn't realize the catastrophic danger it represented. She immediately handed the data over to the local police department. The lead detective on the missing persons unit, a veteran named Miller, recognized the name E. Vance instantly. Ethan Vance had recently consulted on the security systems for the town's municipal buildings, including the very library where Leo spent his afternoons. Detective Miller didn't rush out to arrest Ethan. He didn't have a body, and he didn't have physical proof of a crime. He had a technical log from a missing teenager's computer that could easily be dismissed by a skilled defense attorney as an unauthorized hack or a digital fabrication. So Miller chose to play a long, silent game. He put an active, low-profile surveillance detail on Ethan Vance. For 2 weeks, investigators watched Ethan's movements. They watched him leave his suburban home, climb into his pristine black pickup truck, and drive to his corporate office. They watched him meet Chloe for dinner. They watched them act like any ordinary, affectionate couple planning a bright future. There were no red flags, no suspicious purchases, no erratic behavior, until the morning of June 3rd, 2026. The weather that morning was brutal. A torrential downpour had turned the streets of Oak Ridge into slick, gray channels. The surveillance team observed Ethan walking out to Chloe's blue sedan instead of his own truck. He spent roughly 10 minutes working near the rear bumper in the blinding rain. To a casual observer, it looked like he was fixing a loose license plate or checking a tire. But then Ethan went back inside the house, and 5 minutes later, Chloe walked out alone. She climbed into the driver's seat of the sedan, pulled out of the driveway, and began her daily commute toward the daycare center where she worked. Detective Miller knew this was his moment. He didn't want to alert Ethan by pulling him over directly. Instead, he coordinated with a patrol unit to execute a routine traffic stop on Chloe's vehicle, citing an expired registration tag. The plan was simple: get Chloe out of the car, do a quick visual inspection, and see if Ethan's sudden morning activity left any physical trace. They had no idea that the trap they were setting for Ethan was about to catch Chloe in the worst possible way. When the patrol car activated its lights behind Chloe's sedan, she pulled over immediately. She was completely cooperative. She handed over her license, smiled at the officer, and apologized for the oversight regarding her registration. But as the officer stood by her driver's side window, the heavy rain beating against the roof, he caught a distinct, unmistakable whiff of something foul cutting through the damp air. It was a sweet, heavy, chemical odor mixed with something deeply primal, the smell of advanced decomposition. The officer's demeanor shifted instantly. He asked Chloe to turn off the engine and step out of the car. She complied without a single hesitation, her face showing nothing but pure confusion. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, her voice clear and completely unburdened by guilt. "Ma'am, please step over to the sidewalk with my partner," the officer replied, his hand resting instinctively on the retention strap of his holster. The patrolman walked to the back of the sedan. He inserted the key into the trunk lock. The mechanism clicked open, and the heavy trunk lid lifted. What lay inside wasn't just a body. It was a meticulously preserved, frozen horror scene. Leo Keller's remains had been tightly wrapped in layers of clear industrial plastic sheeting, then covered by a heavy wool blanket to mask the shape. His wrists were bound behind his back with thick, black, industrial zip ties. It was clear he had been kept in a commercial freezer for months, and had only recently been moved into the vehicle. The patrolman felt his stomach drop. He looked back at Chloe, who was standing under an umbrella with the second officer, completely oblivious to what had just been exposed. She was looking at her phone, likely trying to text Ethan to tell him she was going to be late for work. Within 20 minutes, Chloe Reed was in handcuffs, sitting in the back of a police cruiser, hurtling toward the precinct. Her blue sedan was towed under heavy guard straight into the secure garage of the Homicide Division. When the news hit the precinct desk, Detective Miller knew they had to act instantly before Ethan realized the car had been seized. A second team descended on Ethan's office, arresting him at his desk without incident. He didn't fight, he didn't yell, he simply adjusted his glasses, closed his laptop, and walked out to the police van in absolute silence. Now, both suspects were secured in identical, isolated concrete rooms on opposite sides of the homicide wing. The stage was set for a brutal psychological extraction. But as Detective Miller sat down to review the initial forensics report from the garage, a terrifying detail caught his eye. The thermal readings of the body indicated that Leo Keller's remains had begun to thaw only a few hours prior to the traffic stop. And inside the pocket of Leo's waterlogged jacket, forensics had found a small, battery-powered digital audio recorder. The device was still functional, and when the technician hit play, the audio didn't capture the sound of Leo's capture 5 months ago. It captured a crisp, terrifyingly clear conversation that had been recorded inside Ethan's private office just 36 hours before the arrest. A conversation that proved Ethan wasn't working alone. The atmosphere inside the Homicide Division of the Oak Ridge Police Department was suffocating. 2 concrete rooms, completely identical in their cold, stark geometry, held the 2 starkly contrasting halves of a shared life. In Interrogation Room A, Chloe Reed was completely unraveling. Her composed exterior had vanished, replaced by hyperventilating, raw terror. She was clutching her arms around her chest, rocking back and forth, her tears smudging her mascara into dark streaks. Detective Miller stood behind the two-way mirror, watching her intently. He had spent 20 years reading liars. He knew the difference between the calculated performance of a guilty sociopath and the shattered psyche of a person whose reality had just been violently demolished. Chloe wasn't looking at the exit. She wasn't asking for a lawyer to seal her lips. She was completely open, her defenses entirely broken, offering her phone, her keys, her password, her entire life to the detectives, if it would prove she didn't know about the horror hidden behind her back seat. But then, Miller turned his attention to the monitor displaying Interrogation Room B. Ethan Vance sat completely differently. His hands were folded neatly. His breathing was slow, rhythmic, and perfectly controlled. He offered a polite, professional nod. This is the exact second where the sympathy trap begins. In high-stakes true crime, suspects shift to a sophisticated psychological maneuver. They attempt to align themselves with the investigator's logic. They play the role of the rational, helpful, and concerned citizen. Notice Ethan's word choice. He doesn't say monstrous. He calls the discovery incredibly alarming, downplaying the visceral horror into a clinical problem. Detective Miller didn't take the bait. He sat down across from Ethan, laid the thick manila folder containing Leo Keller's file on the table, and opened it slowly, revealing the bright color photographs of the victim. By removing any room for a blanket denial, Ethan's response didn't just shock the detectives, it shifted the entire nature of the case. If you want to see how a master manipulator tries to wiggle out of a corner, hit that subscribe button to TimeWithX. It was a staggering performance. Ethan had spun a narrative out of thin air, transforming himself from a monster into a vigilante. He tapped into a moral justification loop, claiming a horrific act was to shield innocent children and his beloved fiancée. To an outside observer, his story might have carried a shred of twisted plausibility. It explained the technical connections perfectly. But back in the forensics laboratory, technician Sarah Lynn was listening to the digital audio recorder recovered from Leo's waterlogged jacket pocket. The file captured a conversation between Ethan and an unidentified voice, discussing the market valuation of an illicit encrypted data stream. The technician stopped the tape and rewound it. She played the voice again. It wasn't a criminal figure. It was the voice of someone who walked the halls of the police department every single day. Assistant District Attorney Thomas Vance.
The revelation of the audio tape sent a shockwave through the upper echelons of the Oak Ridge Police Department. Detective Miller was pulled out of Interrogation Room B by his captain during the middle of Ethan's elaborate explanation of his righteous vigilante actions. Standing in the hallway, Surrounded by senior administrators and a stone-faced internal affairs investigator, Miller listened to the audio file through a pair of heavy headphones. The voice of Assistant District Attorney Thomas Vance was unmistakable. Thomas was a powerful, politically connected prosecutor. Thomas had spent the last 8 years building a reputation as a fierce advocate for law and order. He was the man who signed off on local search warrants. He was the man who directed grand juries. He was the very person the Missing Persons Unit had consulted when Leo Keller first disappeared. The pieces of this terrifying puzzle were suddenly falling into place with a brutal, sickening velocity. Leo hadn't stumbled onto a local hacker. He had accidentally penetrated a highly sophisticated, high-tech digital extortion and surveillance ring operated by the Vance brothers. Ethan provided the technical infrastructure, using his security firm to covertly install stalkerware and hidden cameras inside the homes of local residents. Thomas used his legal authority to shield the operation from any active investigation. Leo Keller had intercepted a live, unencrypted data feed. Leo intercepted a feed of a local woman's private bedroom broadcasted from Ethan's truck. When Leo traced that feed, he found a manifest of files. He found the complete admin login credentials, listing the names, IP addresses, and bank accounts of the prominent figures who paid for this illicit network. Leo wasn't a predator. He was the ultimate whistleblower. And that was the exact reason he could never be allowed to walk out of that library alive. Detective Miller felt a cold, hard anger settle in his chest. He handed the headphones back to the technician and walked down the corridor. He walked past Interrogation Room A, where Chloe was still weeping, completely unaware that her entire engagement had been an elaborate operational shield. He stepped back inside Interrogation Room B. Ethan looked up, a slight, confident smirk playing at the corners of his lips. He believed Miller had spent the last 15 minutes checking his claims. He believed his web of lies was successfully taking hold. Ethan Vance begins to lay out his terms for Chloe's release. Detective Miller didn't sit down this time. He walked slowly around the metallic table, stopping directly behind Ethan's chair. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small digital tablet, and laid it face up on the table directly in front of the suspect. "You really are a genius, Ethan," Miller said, his voice dropping into a dangerous, quiet growl. "You built a beautiful narrative. It had everything. Moral justification, protection of children, chivalry. You almost had me believing you were a modern-day knight in shining armor. But there's a major problem with your software architecture. It leaves traces." Miller tapped the screen. An audio playback menu appeared. "We didn't find Leo's body because of a lucky traffic stop, Ethan," Miller whispered. "We found it because Leo was smarter than you. When you ambushed him outside that library 5 months ago, you took his phone, you took his laptop, you wiped his hard drives. But you forgot that a kid who builds custom computers doesn't rely on standard consumer tech. He had a micro recorder sewn into his jacket. It was voice activated, and it's been sitting in your warehouse freezer, recording every ambient sound for 140 days. Ethan's posture froze. The rhythmic tapping of his fingers on the table stopped instantly. The color began to slowly drain from his cheeks. "Let's listen to your righteous protection in real time," Miller said, pressing the play button on the tablet. The speaker didn't output a medical emergency. It output the sharp, metallic echo of a commercial warehouse, the sound of a steel door. The recorded audio evidence begins to play from the hidden micro recorder. The audio played through to the end, followed by the heavy, mechanical hum of the industrial freezer unit kicking on in the background. The silence that followed inside Interrogation Room B was absolute. The illusion of the community savior had completely evaporated, leaving behind the raw reality of a cold-blooded predator who had executed a child to protect a digital revenue stream. Ethan's eyes darted. His analytical control was shattered. His lips began to twitch. He reached for water, his hand shaking so violently that liquid spilled. Ethan begins to stammer, desperately claiming the audio evidence is a digital fabrication. "Shut up, Ethan. While you were sitting here giving your performance, a federal tactical unit executed a simultaneous raid on your brother's office. They found the secondary server racks. They found the hidden cameras. They found financial ledgers linking your accounts to offshore wallets." Ethan slumped back in his chair, his head dropping into his hands. The psychological weight of his complete forensic defeat had crushed him. He was no longer the smartest suspect in the room. He was a trapped animal, stripped of his digital armor, facing life behind concrete walls. But as Detective Miller turned to walk out, Ethan slowly raised his head, a hollow, desperate look in his eyes. He asked about Chloe. "I'm going to tell her the absolute truth, Ethan. I'm going to tell her that the man she was planning to marry used her car as a hearse for a murdered child." The door clicked shut, leaving Ethan alone with the echoing silence of his own recorded voice. The investigation was functionally complete. The evidence was ironclad, and the conspiracy had been blown wide open from the inside out. But for Oak Ridge, the fallout was just beginning. The legal fallout from the discovery in Chloe Reed's trunk was the swiftest and most explosive in the history of the Oak Ridge Judicial District. With Thomas Vance exposed, the State Attorney General's office immediately stepped in, taking total control to prevent any localized corruption. The trial never happened. Faced with the undeniable reality of the micro-recorder audio, both brothers realized a public trial was a death sentence. In exchange for the removal of the death penalty from their sentencing sheets, both brothers signed comprehensive, non-appealable confessions. On October 14, 2026, Ethan Vance was sentenced to life in a maximum security penitentiary without the possibility of parole. His brother Thomas was handed a consecutive 70-year sentence for conspiracy to commit murder, human exploitation, and gross official corruption. He will be 85 years old before he is even eligible to look at a parole board. Chloe Reed was cleared within 48 hours. Forensic mapping of her phone data and the warehouse audio proved she was entirely an administrative shield for Ethan's operations. But while her physical body walked out into the autumn air, her psychological freedom was much harder to reclaim. She immediately left Oak Ridge. She changed her name and vanished into a quiet life out of state, carrying the invisible scar of knowing she shared a bed with a monster. For Maria Keller, justice was a cold, quiet room. She used the funds from Leo's backup to establish a regional foundation for digital safety, ensuring her son's profound technical genius will permanently protect other children in the way he fought to protect the women of Oak Ridge. The case of the Fiancée remains a terrifying case study in modern digital predation and the terrifying masks that evil can wear in our everyday lives. It reminds us that sometimes the people we trust the most, the ones planning our futures, are the ones operating the darkest secrets. But if you think the case of Ethan Vance represents the absolute limit of technological self-sabotage, you haven't seen anything yet.